Good morning, everyone. All right, so today we're going to be working on baby rolls. We'll start with a little bit of light breath work. Going to work on bringing breath up into the chest and upper back region, going through some of our bowls of soup work. Again, anytime we get into breath work, getting into the chest, I want to be cautious for our emotional state, anxiety. It's easy to provoke a kind of heightened emotional states since we're getting into parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system with breath work. So I want to be cautious and safe in that area. So with all that, let's go ahead and get started. All right, we're going to start on our back, getting into our crocodile breath. So making our nice big C shapes with our hands. Placing hands below the rib cage, above the hip bone in that nice meaty section of the abdominal wall. Thumbs I want wrapped around the back so that you can press into the low back musculature. Index fingers are wrapping around the front so that you can feel a little bit onto the musculature on the belly. And then the side palms are pressing into the side of the body. And we're going to work on breathing like a crocodile or expanding the abdominal wall out and away like a balloon. It's focusing primarily on that inhale breath. Nice inhale, inhaling through the nose. Exhale out through the mouth. And as we exhale, draw your navel in towards your spine, like you're trying to kind of flatten your vertebrae down to the floor with your belly button. And then on the very next inhale, we're expanding that balloon out and away, blowing that balloon up big, that abdominal wall. And we'll get a good 5 to 6 breaths. And with each exhale, full express of all your air. And then with each inhale, we're trying to expand that balloon a little bit wider, a little bit bigger. As you're inhaling, filling up the balloon, notice filling up that into tension of that balloon. On the exhale, let all the tension melt off your body. Shoulders, head, feel your shoulders relax down to the floor. We're going to let our arms drop down to the side, legs go nice and flat, and we're going to do some light baby roll stretch. I don't want to go into our full range baby roll. I want to start really slow and easy. This is kind of an assessment just to get a feel for how does rotation, what's the experience of rotation through our spine before we get any other significant full body joint mobility going. So arms are going to come up overhead in this nice Y position. We're lightly pressing both heels down, and I want to keep the heels downwardly pressed as we go into our light baby roll. Going to inhale, filling up that crocodile breath. On the exhale, lifting head and arm, reaching across the body. Allow the hip to lift off the floor. Seeing how far can you reach without going into pain, keeping both heels pressed into the floor. Inhale, we're coming all the way back to the floor. Exhale, reaching across to the other side. Again, starting slow. This needs to be non-painful. So if you have pain in the back, then you need to back off. I definitely do not want to trigger anything over level 1, level 2 on a scale of 0 to 10, which is that light discomfort. We're going back and forth a good 5 times to each side. And kind of notice, how does it feel when you're reaching with your right hand compared to how does it feel when you're reaching with your left hand. Notice your heels. One side, do your heels press harder into the floor, or do they press lighter into the floor? Does it feel tighter through your low back? Do you feel some tension through your shoulders as you're trying to reach? After 5 in each direction, we're going to come back to our starting point And now we're going to lift and reach through our legs, keeping the legs elevated high. We're reaching across as if we're trying to reach up onto a shelf or onto a couch. As we reach, the shoulder is allowed to lift up off the floor, but I want to keep some contact with the back of the hand. Inhale into our crocodile breath as we come back to center. Exhale as we lift and reach across to the other side. Again, I want to keep this light and easy, non-painful. Notice, how does this feel when you reach through with the right leg compared to how does it feel when you reach with the left leg? Do you feel tightness and tension in the back? Do you feel it up into the shoulders? Are you able to go as far in both directions, or does it feel tighter in one direction? I got a little bit more tension in my right side low back when I reach with my right leg compared to when I reach with my left leg. Although when I reach with my left leg, I have more tension in the front of my chest and shoulder on my left shoulder. Once we do 5 in each direction, we're going to go ahead and flip over onto our belly. Arms are coming up overhead. This is where I want to try to keep the elbows pulled in tight to the ears. I don't want the upper arm to come out away from the head where we're reaching out through the side here. Arms straight up, almost like we're trying to graze our ear with our upper arm. We're also going to look into the corners of our eyes and let our head turn as we lift elbow up to the ceiling on our exhale. As we lift and roll, as if we're trying to roll all the way onto our back, allow your knee to slide up, but keep it in contact with the floor. We're only going as far over as we can without that knee lifting up. Inhale, we're coming all the way back to the floor. Exhale, looking through the corners of your eyes, turn the head, lift from the opposite shoulder. Again, allow that knee to slide up and then to slide back down as we come back to our chest. And just like with the other, when we were on our back, I want to compare how does this feel when we reach through the right arm compared to reaching with the left arm. And again, note how tight my arm is to my ear. I'm not letting my arm move away from my head. I can get a whole lot of reach through the shoulder without really getting into the baby roll aspect in my spine. So I want this to be more spinal related, which is why we want to keep that arm tight to the ear. Again, how does this feel reaching through the right side compared to the left side? I feel on my right, I feel that same low back tightness that I felt in the previous position. When I lift through the left, I feel that tension in that front of the shoulder of my left shoulder. So those are the kind of notes that I want to take for each of these movements. Once we've done our 5, we can let our arms drop straight out to the side with the palms down. And we're going to bend one knee, pull the top of the foot towards the shin as hard as you can. So I'm actively pulling the toes to my shin. And from here, we're going to just simply lift the heel up, seeing if you can, as if you're trying to touch the ceiling with your heel. As you exhale, inhale, bringing that heel back down, switching to the other foot. Pull the top of the foot back to the shin, and then reach that heel like you're trying to touch the ceiling. And we're going to go back and forth. As you're lifting that heel on the leg that's lifting, the opposite leg, I want to make sure that the hip is flat to the floor. I don't want to lift that knee and feel that front of the hip create space on the floor here. Keep that hip down. It means you cannot push down through the knee that's on the ground. This is a lift through the heel. It's going to be an activation through that glute, not through the front of the opposite hip. Once we do 5 on each side, If you feel like you are able to get good lift and you have good range of motion and there's no pain, no discomfort, then we can apply a little bit of rotation. As you lift that heel as high as you can, then we're rotating the hips, letting them turn as if you're trying to place that foot flat to the floor on the opposite side of your body. But we're only going as far as you can go without your shoulder lifting up off the floor. So we're going to inhale as we bring it back down, exhale as we lift, and rotate lightly, angling that foot like we're trying to reach to the floor, bringing it back down and across. Again, these are light. I want to make sure that we are not moving into discomfort, pain, or stress. Keeping the movement nice and easy. Notice how does it feel on the right side compared to the left side. When I lift my left knee up and rotate, I have more tension through the front of my left hip, and then I get into that right side low back tightness and tension again. After 5, we're going to very slowly come up, and we're going to come all the way up into a standing position, and we're going to grab a staff to do some shoulder mobility. But as you're getting up, make sure that you're not dizzy, lightheaded. If you feel any kind of dizziness or lightheadedness, kind of stay seated for a moment and let that pass before you come up to a standing position. All right, so with our staff, starting with a nice shoulder width grip. This is where I want to imagine we're trying to bend or break the staff in two. And I want that bending to happen not just at the wrist, but also at the elbow pit. So the elbow pit should be spiraling up towards the ceiling. And I want to feel it in the shoulder blades. Shoulder blades should be packing down on, like we're moving them into our back pockets, all at the same time that that elbow pit is turning up. So that should create tension through the shoulders, through the upper shoulders and the arms. Starting out, keeping the staff low, we're going to come back to our breath. Inhale into our crocodile breath. Exhale, drawing navel into the spine. Nice and as much as you can, and then inhale, filling up that abdominal wall. Start to notice the movement of your pelvis related to the inhale and exhale of your breath. As we inhale, filling up that the belly, pelvis is going to tilt slightly forward to where we get some sway in our low back. Exhale, as we scoop, as we draw that navel in, we're scooping a little bit. Feel the glutes kind of engage, feel the core tighten up. And then inhale, we're going to move a little bit more into that sway back on the inhale. Exhale, moving more into that scoop. Can you feel that scoop? Can you feel your glutes kind of tighten up as you scoop? Now on the next inhale, as we fill up, get nice sway in the back. Once we exhale, we're lifting our arms and pulling our elbows towards our ears at the same time that we're scooping and drawing that navel in. So we're going to be in that clenched glute position. Exhale, draw navel in. Glutes are clenched as we're pulling elbows back. Inhale, let the elbows go forward. Let the pelvis tilt. Let the sway, allow sway in the back. Exhale, scoop and pull. Again, I want to keep that tension in the staff as if we're trying to break it in two. That's going to keep that tension in the upper shoulders. Inhale, let the pelvis pull forward. Get a nice sway in the back. Exhale, scoop. Feel those glutes engaged as you pull. The more you're able to scoop, you should feel the rib cage stay tucked down. What I'm trying to avoid here is pulling the elbows back with a sway in the back so that we have that big rib cage pointing out. This is not the position I want to be in. I want to be here, scooped, tucked, and drawing back. We'll let the arms come back down. We're going to move the staff to behind the body. palms facing backwards, reaching down actively. Draw the elbows together like you're trying to touch them, and we're still trying to bend the staff, but we're trying to bend it away from our body. So elbow pits should still be spiraling forward. Shoulder blades should still be reaching downward towards your back hip pockets. Inhale, filling up that nice, that crocodile breath. Exhale, we're lifting elbows up towards the ceiling. Inhale, letting them soften. Exhale, lift and squeeze a little higher. Now, as we're lifting, I want to actively try to bend the staff. Feel those elbows spiraling, elbow pits spiraling forward. Feel the shoulder blades trying to pack even more down and back, almost like they're trying to fold back to touch each other. And notice how that helps to open up and lift the chest in front. This is one we can do up to 10 or even 20 reps. We should get, the more reps you do, you'll probably start to feel some burn, muscle burn in the upper shoulders. Really nice, slow squeeze, especially at the top end of that range. Then we can go ahead and spiral our palms, flipping our hands to the opposite side of the staff, but everything else is going to be the same. We're still bending the staff away from the body. Nice inhale into that crocodile breath. Exhale, lift as we're trying to bend that staff. Feel that nice opening chest. Inhale lets it soften. Exhale, lift and squeeze. Again, these are really, this particular movement with this position of the hands, palm facing forward, really good for assessing the shoulders, especially the bicep tendon. So notice if you feel more tension in the front of one shoulder than you do in the other shoulder. My left shoulder, this is where that bicep tendon, that tension I have through the front of the chest, this is where, this is getting into that space where I tend to have some issues in that left shoulder. So this is a really good assessment point. So definitely want to take note of it. And again, 10 to 20 reps, light squeeze, continue to spiral, feel that chest open up a little bit more with each one. And we can go ahead and set the staff down to the side. And we're going to get into some bowls of soup. I want to let the arms drop straight down to the side. We're going to open the palms, spread the fingers out as wide as you can. I want to spread so much that you feel a stretch within the palms of your hands. Elbows are actively extended away. We're going to spiral the palms up as high towards the ceiling as you can. And then we're going to spiral both palms, thumbs turning down, turning those hands as far in as you can. We're spiraling those arms as much as we can, keeping that spiraled through the long arm bones. I don't want the shoulder blades to get into this movement of our thoracic cat-cow movement just yet. Largely just feel that the long bones spinning within that shoulder socket. With each one, you're seeing how high can you spiral those palms up towards the ceiling, and then how far can you internally spiral. As you spiral the palms up towards the ceiling, feel your shoulder blades depress downward, feel your chest lift up towards the ceiling. I want to inhale as we're spiraling up, exhale as we're spiraling down, thumbs pointing down. And now I want to start to allow the shoulder blades to move a little bit. As we exhale, spiraling down, allow the hands to start to shift forward of the body. Keep spiraling and feel the shoulder blades round up over the ribs. See if you feel some stretch through the upper back. And then as we inhale, arms are sliding back down to the hips. As we spiral up towards the ceiling, feel the shoulder blades draw down and back. Can you feel them pack along the upper back, moving down towards your hips? Can you feel that tight pack and lift of the chest in the front? Exhale as you spiral internally, reaching forward slightly. Again, nice big rounded upper back. Inhale as we lift. And now I want to start to bring in our pelvis to this. As we reach forward, palms pointing down, we're exhaling and we're scooping, getting this rounded lower back at the same time. As we inhale, arms slide back down towards the hips, spiraling open. Inhale, nice lift. We can even get a little bit of a sway in the back. Exhale, nice scoop. Try to keep your eyes focused on a point on the wall in front of you. We're basically now doing standing cat-cows, right? Nice big open chest. Eyes stay fixed on a point on the wall. Exhale, reach forward, feel those shoulders round, scoop the pelvis. How much rounding can you get through the back as we go back and forth? Good. Now we're going to bring our bowls of soup up towards shoulder level. Palms are facing up towards the ceiling. And now we're going to go into our alternating spirals. So starting one arm at a time. Spiraling thumb down. Again, I want to stay in that shoulder, the long arm bones at the shoulder socket. So I don't want the shoulder blades to move a whole lot right now. Spiraling back up and switching to the other side. Notice how smooth does the right shoulder spiral and spin in that shoulder socket compared to the left. We're exhaling as we spiral thumb down. Inhale as we spiral thumb up. And this is where I want to, now we're going to start to go move them at the same time oppositionally. As my left thumb is spiraling down, my right palm is spiraling up. And we can now start to free the shoulder blade. Allow that shoulder blade to roll forward over the ribs. And then as we come to the other side, doing the same thing. And as you're doing this, kind of imagine that you're made of rubber and you're trying to reach and stretch to touch the walls out at your sides. Feel that reach away as we're spiraling through. And we can start to allow those shoulders to contort a little bit, getting a little bit of a twist in the spine. How far can you spiral inwardly? Feel that twist all the way through shoulders into the upper back. And this is a great place to really notice, how does this feel? Left side to right side. Does one shoulder feel a little clunky? Is it not as smooth compared to the other one? Those are really good assessment points to take notice of. All right, so we're now going to drop down to the floor, coming to hands and knees, spreading hands nice and wide, grounding palms. I want to go ahead and have the toes tucked underneath as well. And from here, we're going to come right back into our bowls of soup, except for the fact that our hands are grounded to the floor. So I want to really focus on those elbow pits. Spiral the elbow pits as far forward as they can go, and then spiral them as far back towards your feet as they can go. And just like with the bowls of soup, we're noticing how does that shoulder spin in the socket, but also how does it feel at the wrist. Since our hands aren't moving, the bones down at the wrist have to slide along that in their groove as well. How does that feel right side compared to left side? And we're going to kind of get into the exact same movement we just did while we were standing, basically getting into our cat-cows, but we're going to direct this through our hands. So as we spiral the elbow pits in, start to press into the floor and allow the shoulder blades to round over the rib cage, getting a little bit of that rounded upper back. Can you feel a little bit of a stretch between the shoulder blades? And then we're spiraling the elbow pits forward and feeling the shoulder blades pack down, moving towards our hip pockets, just like we did when we were standing. Exhale as you spiral internally and reaching. So we're exhaling as we get rounded upper back. We're inhaling as we're spiraling our elbow pits forward. Feel the chest drop to the floor as those shoulder blades reach to your hip pockets. And now we'll add in our pelvis. As we exhale, spiraling elbows in, we're drawing the navel into the spine and we're scooping. As we inhale, filling up that belly, elbows spiral forward, pelvis turns down to the floor. We're getting more into that sway lower back. And with each one, can you move a little bit further into each range as we spiral in and scoop? Can you feel that nice big stretch from the hips all the way up to the base of the skull? As you inhale, can you fill up that abdominal wall? Feel the chest drop. Can you feel your shoulder blades pack actively like they're reaching to your hip pockets? We'll go ahead and come off the wrists a little bit, give them a little bit of a break. And we're going to go ahead and change positions. We're going to get into a nice wide V-sit. So V-sit, actively reaching the knees down to the floor, actively pulling the top of the feet back like we're trying to touch our shins. Hands are coming behind hips, grounded down, and we're going to spiral those elbows out and away and feel those shoulder blades packing down. Again, reaching down towards the floor and allow that lift of your chest in the front. And we're going to focus on the legs first, and then we're going to do a little bit of neck work as well. So we're actively pulling the top of the foot back towards the shin, and we're actively reaching the back of the knee down towards the floor. The more we actively pull and reach down, you should notice your quads kind of light up on fire, and we want to maintain that throughout the next part. Focusing on the kneecaps, turning the kneecaps in as much as we can, as if you're trying to touch the floor. And then we're externally spiraling as if we're trying to touch the kneecaps to the floor on the outside of our body. Basically doing our bowls of soup, but we're doing so from our legs. And again, noticing the long leg bones, specifically the ball of the socket of the hip bone in that hip socket. How does that feel? Left side compared to right side. Is one side a little tighter, a little stiffer? Is it a little clunkier? Does it not go as far? We can pay attention to the kneecaps and see, does one go a little further? My right knee internally rotates more than my left knee does right now, and I have a lot of tension in this left hip. Then as we externally spiral, it's pretty even on both sides. So I'm lacking some range of motion on internal rotation of my hip on the left side compared to the right side. And I can feel it. It's a little stiff. It's kind of stiff in that area that tends to be a little stiffer on my left leg. With each one, we're seeing if we can, get a little bit more range out of our spirals in both directions, as long as it's not painful. After about 5 to 10 reps, we're going to come back to our starting position. Again, active feet, active knees reaching down. We're going to lift hands up, and we're going to do a little bit of fold work. Inhale, we're nice and tall. Exhale, reaching both hands slow and easy. Inhale brings us all the way back up. This is the one where I like to imagine that my hands are the wave moving up a beach, cresting and then receding back into the water with my inhale and the exhale breath. Notice how this feels through the back line of the legs, hamstrings, back of the knees, even down into the calves, as well as the low back. Does one side feel a little tighter, more restricted? One side leg, one side low back, wherever you might feel it. Once we have a good 5 breaths, 5 folds, we're going to start to deviate just lightly off center, reaching a little bit more to the right, and then a little bit more to the left. But as we reach, I want to try to keep our hands square with the chest. So I don't want one hand reaching further. I want to kind of turn shoulders, turn chest, and reach evenly. And I want to do that to both sides. I largely want to do this so I can get a good sense of assessment of how tight what's the tension levels on the right side compared to the left side. And if I'm moving a little bit differently with one hand compared to the other, it can throw off where I'm actually getting that stretch at. So I want to be fairly even on both sides. Shoulders are square so that I'm doing it the same way to the left side as I am to the right side. And we'll continue to open up our side to side. We can start to reach straight out to the heels. And again, how does this feel reaching through the left side compared to reaching through the right side? My right hamstring is a little tighter, and I also feel it in the inside of my left hip when I reach to my right. My left side, I feel it more in that right side low back. And as I get into it, I can feel it a little bit more in that hamstring. But it is a little bit different side to side. Although as I'm going back and forth, I'm finding it's getting a little bit more even. And that's largely why I want to do my movements on a daily basis, is because first thing in the morning, things are a little out of balance. But as I move back and forth, I can get things to start moving a little bit smoother and get a little bit more balance in my movement. All right, we're staying in our V-sit, bringing hands back to the floor behind our hips, grounding palms and spiraling elbows out and away. Feel the shoulder blades pack down and feel that chest lift up nice and tall. And from here, we're going to do a little bit of light neck mobility. So we're going to start with checking our blind spots. Looking or exhale as we look over our right shoulder lightly, squeezing into it, making sure it's not painful. Inhale as we come back to the center. Exhale as we look over our left shoulder lightly. And notice if one side feels tighter than the other. My right rotation feels pretty good and smooth. My left rotation has some tension in it. I feel like I'm not going quite as far. I feel it in the back of my neck and a little bit in my jaw. As we're reaching side to side, or as we're turning side to side, really reach from your chin and see how far can you get your chin to line up to the edge of the shoulder. I want to focus on that chin more than our forehead because it helps to keep our skulls or our heads stacked on our spine. Otherwise, we're likely to tilt our head and reach from the forehead. I want to keep that head on a swivel as we're looking over left shoulder and then right shoulder. Good. We'll come back to center, and now we're going to do our light tilt and lift. So light tilt, I don't want to drop my ear real far towards my shoulder. I'm just barely tilting it. And then opposite ear, I'm lifting that ear, reaching that ear up towards the ceiling, like I'm trying to touch the ceiling with that ear. You can imagine you got a piece of string pulling that ear up. We're inhaling as we get to center, exhale as we tilt and lift. As you lift through the ear, you can ground and press down through the same side palm in order to create just a little bit more traction. As I'm pressing through that palm, I'm also feeling that shoulder blade pack like it's reaching down towards the floor. As I'm lifting, that creates a little bit more traction in the neck. How does this movement feel left side compared to right side? Good. So last for the neck mobility, we're going to do some shallow neck rolls. And I want to keep this shallow to start with. We can get deeper into the neck roll with each one. So stay small. We're starting by dropping our chin towards our chest, but again, I don't want to drop it all the way. Next, right ear rolls towards the right shoulder. Then our gaze moves up towards the ceiling, and then left ear to the left shoulder, and then chin back down to chest. And now we're going to reverse directions. Going left ear to the left shoulder, eyes come up to the ceiling, and then right ear to the right shoulder, and then chin back down to the chest. And we're going to roll back and forth on this. We're starting out with 4 points. Ear to shoulder, eyes to the ceiling, ear to shoulder, chin to chest. But as we're doing this, I want to start to smooth the movement out. Instead of it being a square with 4 points, can you turn it more into a circle? And as we're getting into our circle, we can get a little deeper into into how far we're going into it, as long as it is not painful. On the pain scale, it needs to stay below a level 2. So it's barely discomfort. I don't want to be eliciting anything significant on the pain scale when working through the neck. If you're noticing any kind of crackly, crepitus sounds, as long as it is not painful, I view that as a positive thing, and we kind of want to go through and de-crackle the crackle. However, if it is painful, then the rules of pain are more important, and I want to make sure we're paying attention and not going too far, not pushing into painful positions. Good. So we're going to relax our arms. We're going to shift into our shin box position. I'm starting out left side shin box. Left palm is down. Left knee is forward. Grounded palm, we're spiraling that elbow out and away, and feel that shoulder blade pack down on the back. Notice the chest lifting up. I want to be nice and tall through the sternum, through the top of the skull. We're going to focus on the back hip first. Inhale, fill up your crocodile breath, and allow that pelvis, that hip, to drop down towards the floor. If it touches the floor, allow it to sit. If it doesn't touch the floor, actively reach to the floor as long as it's not painful. We're going to exhale, drawing our navel in and scooping our hip forward. That hip lifts off the floor and rolls over the top of the other hip. We're seeing how far can we reach your hip bone. Can you feel some stretch through the front of the hip? Inhale, we're dropping it all the way back down towards the floor. Exhale, lift and scoop as if you're trying to turn your tailbone forward and reach with your tailbone. The more you're able to scoop that pelvis, the more you should feel a stretch, light stretch through the front of the hip, and you may even start to feel that glute tightening up and contracting in the rear. Shoulder needs to remain solid. I don't want a whole lot of movement through the shoulders, upper body here. This is all hip. Hip is moving forward and then coming back down. I'm not turning at my shoulders. Notice how far your hip travels between reaching to the floor and coming forward. How far is that range of motion? And now we're going to shift over to the other side and do the same thing. Again, palm is grounded, elbows spiraled out and away, shoulder blades sliding down, packing towards the floor, chest is lifting up tall. Focusing on that back hip. Inhale, let that hip drop to the floor. My left hip will not touch the floor at the moment. My right hip did, and I feel that same tension that I felt in the V-sit in the front of that hip. This is my chronic tight area. So again, the more we do these movements every day, we start to get a good idea of where our tension patterns are. But this feels a little tighter today than usual. Exhale, scooping, lifting, drawing navel in. That is really tight on me right now. My range of motion is very, very limited compared to the other side. I had good range of motion on the right hip. So this one I'm going a little slower with. As I'm getting into it, I'm now able to kind of find the floor barely. It's still not as much range of motion as I had on the other side, and I'm getting a little bit more scoop into that front of the hip. We're going to do this. I'm going to do 5 reps on this side, and then we're going to go ahead and shift back to the other side. We're going to do the exact same movement, breath with that hip movement. And then we're going to do 5 of those, and then we're going to add our reach and our rotation. So again, grounded palm, spiraled elbow, packed shoulder. Inhale, let that hip drop. Exhale, scoop. Again, we're doing this for 5. Notice coming back to it the second time, it usually moves a little bit better. It's a little smoother. This side was the better side. I moved better on this one. But even with that, it still feels a little bit improved even from the first. Once we get 5 reps, on the next inhale, as you exhale, we're scooping into it the exact same way, and then we're adding, imagining we got a piece of bread, and I want to share that bread with Skeletor, and I'm going to reach straight through the knee, seeing how far can I reach. Inhale, we're bringing it all the way back, dropping that hip to the floor. Exhale, lift the hip, scoop first. Find the stretch in the front of the hip first. Add the rotation second. In this rotation, I want to spiral over our shoulder. I don't want to fold. I don't want my shoulders to move forward and backwards. My shoulders are rotating over the grounded hand. I'm reaching, seeing how far can I reach without shifting my shoulders forward and backwards. Notice, how does this stretch through the front of the hip? How does this stretch feel as we apply rotation into the back? And we're going to do the same thing on the other side, starting with just the hip. So again, grounded palm, spiraled elbow, packed shoulder, and we're doing 5 breaths. Inhale, letting that hip drop to the floor, which my left hip's dropping a little bit lower now than it did earlier. And then exhale, scoop, feel that front of the hip stretch, feel that glute contract. Second time on this left hip, it's moving a lot better than it did on that first one. Still stiffer than the right, but a lot more range. I can feel the floor, still a little restricted on that. And I can start to feel that glute contract. Again, not quite as much as my right, but it's a lot closer. So the movements that you find that are out of balance one side to the other, I highly recommend going back and doing those movements 2 or 3 times. If you notice that it improves the second time, then I would definitely add in a third time, especially if it still has some levels of restriction to it. And those would be movements that I would recommend doing more periodically throughout the day and throughout the week. Now that we're through 5, we're going to add in our reach and rotation. So nice exhale, active scoop, and then sharing our bread. Oh, and that whole line right there, getting into the low back from that hip. A lot tighter on this side than it was on the other side. So I'm moving slow. Nice exhale. Each one, I'm not forcing it. Kind of playing with that juicy nature of the stretch. If it allows me to go a little further, I'm going to squeeze a little bit more range without forcing it. We're going to go ahead and switch over to the other side, and now we're going to get into our folds. So with folds, I'm going to use the shin as the arrow, reaching both hands evenly through the shin. I want both hands to reach even all the way out. I don't want one hand going further. So only reach as far as you can reach with both hands even. Inhale, we're coming all the way back. Exhale, seeing if we can reach a little further. We're going to do 5 folds on this side, and then we'll do the same thing on the other side. But with each one, we're seeing if we can reach and fold a little further. Again, keeping those hands even. Once we get 5, we're going to shift to the other side. Doing the same thing. Nice reach through that shin. Again, keeping both hands even. As we exhale, inhale, bringing it all the way back up. With each one, we're seeing if we can reach a little further. And notice, how does this side feel different than it did on the other side? Once we get 5, now we're going to start going back and forth, side to side. So this is where we can either do a windshield wiper transition to get across, where both feet stay on the floor, knees lift. Use your hands on this. I don't want to try to do this with no hands right now. I actually want to ground through the shoulders. I want to engage that packed shoulder as we transition across. The other option is the thread through. Thread through, lifting up that back leg, spiraling it around, threading it through underneath the front leg. Front leg lifts up and spirals around to our shin box on the other side. So this is our other option for a transition from one side to the other. And I like the thread through right now because I feel that thread through work, that left tightness, mobility tightness in that anterior compartment of my hip. So as we get to each side, we're getting into our nice fold. Inhale, come back up. We get another breath cycle as we transition to the other side. And then nice exhale as we fold. And with each one, I want to start to open up our shin box a little bit wider. So if we start here, I want to start to let that back leg move and slide back a little further. And I want to do that on both sides. This is a great way of kind of getting some extra assessment into that back hip as far as how mobile it is, how does it contribute to our fold. Do you feel more stretch, less stretch in the hip, in the low back? Do you feel it more on the hip in the back as you start to open up that back leg more and more? And so we're going to do a good 10 reps on each side, slowly opening up those legs a little bit more so that we're getting closer and closer to what we consider like a yoga class pigeon pose, so that by the time we get to the number 10, we're as close to that pigeon pose as we can get without forcing it and without going into pain. Continue to move slow. Allow your breath to kind of pace you. The longer you can, nice long inhale, nice long exhale, not rushed, not forcing it to the point where you feel your breath start to speed up or where you feel like you're hyperventilating. Kind of finding that pace of breath that feels smooth and manageable. And hopefully you're feeling both of those hips starting to open up a good amount. All right. So we're going to come back to our back, and I want to come back to our baby roll stretches. So we started out with some light baby rolls, not really moving far into them. Now we should be a little bit more loosened up, have a little bit more awareness of how our spine feels. Again, if it's painful, we cannot go into baby rolls with pain. Arms are coming up to a nice wide position. Heels are lightly pressed down into the floor evenly. Exhale as you lift your head, reach with your eyeballs and your hands as you reach across, hips side, lift up. Inhale brings us all the way back. Exhale as you reach across. Let's do 10 reps back and forth. With each one, see if you can reach those fingers a little bit further. Can you get a little closer to like rolling all the way onto your chest, except without lifting your heels off the floor? As you're getting further into it, reaching in through those fingertips, you can start to reach away through your toe tips, creating even more traction through the body. See how long can you get toe tip to fingertip. And can you feel that as one long, continuous stretch? Fingers, arms, shoulder, upper back, lower back, hip down into the legs, all the way down to the toes. After 10, we'll come back to our starting point. We're going to do the same thing, reaching through the legs. Lifting the leg high. Again, I want to keep it up, elevated on a shelf. Shoulder blade should come off the floor, but I want to keep some contact with the back of the hand, back of the palm. Inhales, we come back to center. Exhales, we lift and reach through the other side, extending through those toes like you're a rubber band or made of rubber, trying to reach and extend all the way across the room. See if you can touch that wall off in the distance. And again, with each one, we're seeing how far can you start to reach as if you're rolling all the way onto your belly, except you're maintaining some contact with the back of that hand. As you're reaching and getting long through the fingertip or the toe tips, start to reach and extend away with the fingertips as well. Again, creating even more traction in that body, fingertip to toe tip. Nice and slow. Once we get to 10, I'm going to do one more because these feel really good and juicy. We're going to go ahead and flip over onto our belly. Arms are now coming tight to the ears. This is one where I want to make sure the upper arm is rubbing up against that ear. We're looking into the corners of our eyes as we're rolling. Knee gets to slide up. We're seeing how far can we roll, as if we're trying to go all the way to our back without that knee lifting up off the floor. Inhale as we come back to the center. Exhale, lift. Again, keep that arm tight to the ear. Don't let it come away from the head. Keep it touching. How close can you get that shoulder blade to the floor without your knee lifting up? And again, we're going to do 10 reps, back and forth, nice and slow. Notice how this feels, right side compared to left side. As we're getting into it, as you're reaching overhead, reaching away with those fingertips. You can also start to reach and extend that knee and reach with the toe tips, right? My knee is actually off the floor a little bit, but I'm still in contact with the leg. So my foot's still touching in order to get that nice reach. And this is like trying to get as long through fingertips and toe tips on each side. Inhale as you bring it back. Exhale. Reach through the fingertips, reach through the toe tips. Good. Last one. Arms are coming straight out to the side. Palms are down. Lifting the foot heel up towards the ceiling, actively pulling the toes to the front of the shin. Again, active here through that front of the foot. Lifting the heel like you're trying to touch the ceiling with just your heel bone. Inhale as you set it down, switching to the other side. Actively pull the top of the foot to the shin. Exhale as you lift the heel up. Again, the leg that is lifting, make sure that opposite leg is not pushing down into the floor and lifting your hip up. That opposite leg needs to be soft and relaxed, not engaged. How high are you able to lift that right heel compared to the left heel? Is one side tighter and stiffer than the other side? Again, this needs to be a non-painful movement. So if it's painful, then you need to back off. If this feels good and you're ready to go to the next level, as you lift and reach, we're now going to allow that hip to rotate as if you're trying to place that foot onto the floor on the opposite side of your body. Inhale as you bring it back. Exhale as you lift the opposite side and rotate. Only rotating as far as we can without the front of your shoulder lifting up and moving away from the floor. I want to keep that shoulder down as much as possible. And notice how far are you able to go with the right shoulder or right hip compared to the left hip. Do you get more rotation in one direction than you do in the opposite? I don't get as much rotation through this left hip. Again, it's getting into that front of that hip compartment where I have a lot of tightness and tension and immobility. And so that rotation through the left hip is significantly less than the right. And it affects not just the hip, but also gets into the spine as well. So these are important assessment points. Good. We'll go ahead and roll back over onto our back. Feet come nice and flat to the floor. We're going to make our big C shapes with our hands, and we're going to get 5 to 6 more crocodile breaths in to kind of assess how much better is our breath. So again, index fingers in the front, thumbs are in the rear. Inhale, feel that balloon expand the walls in all directions. Feel it pressing into the thumbs in the low back, pressing into the palms out through the sides, and into the index fingers through the belly. Exhale, draw the navel all the way into the spine, and allow the hands to cinch down just a little bit more in order to create more resistance for your inhale. And kind of notice, has your breath improved? Do you have a little bit more expansion? Do you feel a little bit looser, like you can get more air in? Can you fill that space up a little bit more? And when you're ready, you can let your hands drop down. You can spend another minute or so taking in some nice breath, bringing it up into the ribs, chest, upper back, and neck. Allowing the shoulders to kind of soften down to the floor. This is one where I like to imagine we're breathing into the tension of our ribs, chest, upper back, and on the exhale, allowing that tension to rinse off the body onto the floor. And when you're ready, we'll slowly sit back up. Again, making sure that you're not dizzy, lightheaded from the breath work before we get up to a standing position.